King Solomon, Israel's wisest king, had 700 wives, many of them foreign princesses. His son Rehoboam's mother was an Ammonite. No one questioned Rehoboam's identity as an Israelite. Foreign marriage was royal diplomacy, a mark of power, entirely normal. Then, centuries later, one man arrived in Jerusalem and demanded that hundreds of families divorce their wives and send away their children, backed by the Persian Empire. That man was Ezra. What he did changed the definition of who is a Jew forever, but even the Bible itself couldn't agree he was right. To understand how radical Ezra's ban was, we need the context. Mid-5th century BCE. The Babylonian exile ended decades ago, but Jerusalem remains broken. Persia rules the known world. Nehemiah, a Jewish cupbearer, likely a eunuch serving Emperor Artaxerxes, gets permission to rebuild Jerusalem's walls. He arms his workers against Samaritan, Ammonite, and Arab opposition, finishes in record time, becomes governor, and begins social reforms. Then Ezra arrives from Babylon, a priest-scribe commissioned by Persia to assess how well Mosaic law is being followed. He carries enforcement powers, imprisonment, confiscation, corporal punishment. This is standard Persian policy. Use loyal subjects to regulate local cults. Everything Ezra does must be understood within this imperial framework. Ezra arrives and is horrified. Returned exiles have married non-Israelite women. Even priests see nothing wrong. He calls a mass assembly and demands universal divorce of foreign spouses. It takes months to process all the cases. Here's what makes this radical. The Torah's intermarriage rules were limited and conditional. Deuteronomy banned marriage with 7 specific Canaanite nations because they might lead Israelites to worship other gods, a behavioral concern, not a racial one. Yet even within that ban, Deuteronomy 21 allowed marrying a captive Canaanite woman. Moabites and Ammonites were barred for cruelty to Israel, not bloodline. Egyptians were barred only to the 3rd generation. After that, their descendants could enter the community freely. Phoenicians, Arabs, others, no prohibition at all, so long as the foreign spouse entered Yahweh's covenant. Israel's kings routinely married foreign women. Their children were fully Israelite. Identity followed the father's line. Ezra swept all of this aside. In his prayer in chapter 9, he introduces a phrase never before used in Israelite tradition, holy seed, in Hebrew, zera ha-qodesh. Under this new concept, the prohibition shifts from behavioral to essentialist. Essentialist means based on what someone inherently is, not what they do. The old logic asked, will this foreign spouse lead you to worship other gods? If they join the covenant, marriage is permitted. Ezra's logic asks a different question. Is this person of holy seed? If not, marriage is forbidden. No conversion, no remedy, no exception. Both parents must be Israelite. This was a historical first. Ezra invented a concept of ethnic purity the Torah itself did not contain. He claimed to restore the law. He fundamentally expanded it. Ezra didn't just change the rules about marriage, he changed what held the community together. Nehemiah chapter 8 describes the pivotal scene. The entire community gathers in the square before the water gate. Ezra stands on a specially built wooden platform and unrolls a scroll of the teaching of Moses. He reads aloud from early morning until midday. This is the first recorded public reading of Torah from a scroll. But here's the critical detail. The people no longer understand classical Hebrew. Exile in Babylon shifted their everyday language to Aramaic, the lingua franca or common shared language of the Persian Empire. So Levites stand throughout the crowd, translating the Hebrew into Aramaic and explaining the meaning as Ezra reads. This is the moment Judaism becomes a religion of the book. Not just a temple cult with rituals and sacrifices, but a community organized around the sacred text, one that must be read, translated, interpreted, and argued over. A few weeks later, a formal recommitment ceremony, the people pledge in writing to follow the Torah. At the top of the list, no intermarriage and strict Sabbath observance. These commitments left visible marks. In the centuries after Ezra, Greek writers identified Jews by three distinctive traits: circumcision, Sabbath rest, and endogamy, marrying only within the group. Those three markers became the external signature of Jewish identity in the ancient world. Circumcision was ancient but now emphasized as a boundary marker. Sabbath observance was codified with new strictness. Endogamy, once flexible and situational, became a defining communal norm. Borders not of territory but of practice and dissent. Ezra's reforms were far from the final word. The books of Ezra and Nehemiah themselves record months of resistance, families who refused to comply, leaders who pushed back. Other biblical voices opposed Ezra directly. Isaiah 56 explicitly welcomes foreigners who join themselves to God. My house shall be called a house of prayer for all peoples, a direct counter-voice to Ezra's separatism inside the same canon. On the ground, practice defied policy. The Tobiah family, originally Ammonite, a group Deuteronomy bars from the congregation, became fully assimilated Jewish leaders. The Book of Ruth places a Moabite woman in King David's direct ancestry. The Bible argues with itself. Ezra made the Torah the official authoritative norm for Israel, right? Transformative, but it didn't produce uniformity. Here's the paradox. If practices and beliefs count as authentic only to the degree they accord with Scripture, then everything depends on interpretation. And interpretation varied wildly. During the Persian and the Hellenistic periods, radically different Jewish groups emerged, each citing the same Torah. Right? Pharisees emphasized oral tradition and resurrection of the dead. Sadducees rejected both, insisting on the written text alone. Essenes withdrew to the desert, convinced the temple establishment had betrayed the covenant. Hellenizers embraced Greek culture while claiming Jewish fidelity. Samaritans insisted their Torah was the original. Each group claimed biblical warrant. Ezra unified Jews around a book, not around the reading of that book. He created a shared foundation, not a shared conclusion. That tension has defined Judaism ever since. Step back to the full picture. A tiny community in a vast empire. Their language dying, their temple modest, their political power non-existent. In this moment of existential precariousness, Ezra and Nehemiah built the architecture of Jewish survival, a portable identity anchored in text, community boundaries defined by practice and dissent, a covenantal framework that could endure without land, without kings, without a temple. These foundations carried Judaism through 2,000 more years of diaspora, but the internal debate about boundaries, who belongs, who interprets, who decides, began at the very same moment, written into the very same Bible. That tension isn't a flaw in the system. It may be the feature that kept the tradition alive.